The unexpected assignment. John had always led a quiet life. He lived alone in a small apartment on the outskirts of the city. His days were mostly spent at work, and his nights were filled with silence. It wasn't a bad life, just ordinary. He worked as a mechanic, fixing old machines for a living. He never imagined that one simple assignment would turn everything upside down. One ordinary Thursday, as John was fixing a car engine in the back of his workshop, his phone rang. It wasn't a call he expected. The voice on the other end was sharp, demanding, and strangely unfamiliar. "John Stevens," the voice asked. "Yes," John replied, wiping his hands on a rag. "This is Commander Aaliyah from the Galactic Council. We have an assignment for you. Your skills are needed for a special task." John's heart skipped a beat. Galactic Council. What kind of joke was this? He must have heard wrong. "I think you've got the wrong person." "I'm just a mechanic," he said, half laughing, assuming someone was playing a prank on him. "I assure you, Mr. Stevens, this is no joke. We've been monitoring your work. You'll be compensated generously. The task is simple, but it will change your life." John stood still. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Was this a scam, or was he really being asked to do something that had to do with the Galactic Council? His mind raced with questions, but before he could ask another one, the voice continued. "You will be assigned to take care of a prisoner. She's an alien, a highly classified being, and we need her kept under control. You'll be given a room, food, and everything you need. All you have to do is watch her." The words felt surreal. Alien, prisoner. What kind of job was this? It sounded too wild to be true. John glanced around the room, half expecting someone to jump out and shout, "Gotcha." But the voice continued, unwavering. "She is not to be underestimated. The task is critical, and failure will have serious consequences. Do not let her escape." John didn't know how to respond. The words were heavy, but the tone was serious. There was no room for humor in this conversation. It felt real. "Wait, hold on. You want me to keep an alien prisoner? Are you out of your mind? I'm a mechanic, not some guard or whatever," he protested, still not fully believing it. The voice didn't hesitate. "You were chosen because of your unique qualifications, Mr. Stevens. It's not negotiable. We'll be sending a transport to pick you up. Be ready at 7 p.m. Before he could say anything else, the line went dead. John stood there, his phone still pressed against his ear. He blinked several times, trying to process what had just happened. A prisoner, an alien. His head spun. It couldn't be real. But something told him it wasn't a prank. Maybe it was the cold, authoritative voice of Commander Aaliyah, or the feeling in his gut telling him that this was no ordinary phone call. With a sigh, he stuffed his phone into his pocket and glanced at the clock on the wall. It was just another day, right? Another normal Thursday. But now, everything had changed. Later that evening, John found himself standing outside his small apartment, waiting. He had no idea what was coming, but curiosity gnawed at him. The sky was dim, the sun barely setting, and his thoughts were still racing. Was he really about to meet an alien? Was this all just a huge misunderstanding? The transport arrived exactly at 7 p.m. A sleek, silver vehicle pulled up in front of his building. The doors slid open, revealing two men in dark suits who barely acknowledged him as they gestured for him to enter. They looked serious, and their cold expressions made it clear this wasn't a joke. Without a word, they escorted him into the vehicle. The door closed behind him with a soft hiss, and the engine hummed to life. John sat back in his seat, trying to calm his racing heart. This was happening. There was no turning back now. As the vehicle sped through the city, John's mind wandered. What had he gotten himself into? Who was this alien? And why did they need someone like him for this job? After a long, silent ride, they arrived at a large, modern building on the outskirts of the city. The entrance was heavily guarded, with high-tech security systems flashing. The vehicle came to a halt, and the two men gestured for John to follow them. He stepped out of the vehicle, his legs feeling a bit unsteady. "Come with us," one of the men said as they led him through the building. John couldn't help but notice the strange, almost sterile atmosphere. The walls were white, the floors polished to a perfect shine. Everything was quiet, almost too quiet. Finally, they stopped in front of a door. One of the men unlocked it with a swipe of his card. "She's inside. Remember, she's dangerous. Don't make any sudden moves." John nodded, though his mind was racing. What kind of alien was this? Why was she being kept here? And why had he been chosen for this strange task? The door opened, and John stepped inside, his eyes widening as he saw her for the first time. Standing in the center of the room was a woman, no, an alien woman. She was tall, her skin pale, almost translucent, with sharp features and glowing red eyes that seemed to pierce through him. Her long, dark hair cascaded down her back, and her presence was intimidating. But there was something else. Beneath the cold exterior, John could sense a sadness in her eyes. It was as if she had been through something far worse than just imprisonment. Something deeper, something far more painful. She didn't speak. She simply stared at him, her gaze unreadable. John took a step forward, unsure of what to do next. "Your assignment has just begun," one of the men said, his voice cold. "Keep her under control, Mr. Stevens. And remember, she is not to be underestimated." John swallowed hard. This was real. There was no turning back now. The silent agreement, the door to the room closed behind John with a soft click, and for a moment all he could do was stand there. The alien woman remained motionless in the center of the room, her glowing red eyes never leaving his face. There was an eerie silence, thick with tension. The only sound was the faint hum of the ventilation system overhead. John wasn't sure what to do next. He had never been trained for something like this. All he knew was mechanics, cars, and machines. But standing in front of him was no machine. She was something, otherworldly. Hello," John said, trying to break the silence. His voice felt small, almost out of place in such a cold, sterile environment. The alien woman didn't respond. She simply stared at him, her expression unreadable. Her long black hair fell in waves around her shoulders, and her eyes glowed with an unnatural intensity. John shifted his weight, uncomfortable under her gaze, but he didn't move. "Look," he said, his voice more uncertain now. "I don't know what this is all about. I don't know why I'm here, and I don't know what you want from me, but I'm not going to hurt you." The alien woman remained silent. John frowned. This wasn't going how he expected. He had assumed, at the very least, she would speak to him or acknowledge him in some way. But there was nothing, no reaction, no movement. He glanced around the room, noting the stark, clinical walls and the lack of any personal belongings. It was as if she had been kept here for a long time, isolated from everything. Was she really a prisoner, or was there more to her story than he could understand? After a long pause, John took a hesitant step forward. His shoes clicked against the polished floor, but the alien woman didn't flinch. Her gaze remained fixed on him, Okay, John muttered, more to himself than to her. If you're not going to talk, then I guess I'll just ... wait. He took a seat on the edge of a small, uncomfortable chair in the corner of the room. He watched her, his mind racing. What was going on here? Why had he been chosen for this assignment? He wasn't a soldier or a diplomat, he was just a mechanic. What could he possibly offer in a situation like this? The silence stretched on, only broken by the occasional hiss of the air conditioning. John sighed, rubbing his eyes. This is crazy, he muttered. It was then that he noticed a small shift in the alien woman's posture. For the first time, she seemed to move. It was subtle, but it was enough to catch his attention. Her head tilted slightly, and her red eyes flickered for the briefest moment. John leaned forward, suddenly alert. Did you just... But before he could finish, the alien woman raised her hand slowly, and the air around her seemed to change. A subtle hum filled the room, like the low vibration of something unseen. John blinked, confused. Was she ... reacting to him? Or was she simply adjusting to her environment? She dropped her hand to her side and turned her head slightly to one side. Her gaze softer now, though still intense. John took a deep breath. Okay, maybe we can start over. I'm John. What's your name? The woman's lips barely parted, and for a moment John thought she might speak. But instead, she simply blinked slowly, as if considering his question. John felt a knot form in his stomach. This wasn't what he had expected. He had been given an assignment, yes, but nothing had prepared him for the strange, unspoken tension between them. What was going on inside her mind? What had she been through to make her this way? Another long silence stretched out before him. John felt the weight of her gaze, but there was no hostility in it, only something deeper, something ... unfamiliar. I don't know if this is going to work, John said finally, rubbing his temples. I'm not a therapist, and I don't know how to ... deal with whatever you're going through. The alien woman's eyes flickered again. This time, they didn't glow as brightly, and the intensity seemed to waver. Her face remained neutral, but John couldn't help but feel that there was more to her than met the eye. John sighed. Look, I don't know if you're capable of understanding me, or if you're just ... too far gone. But if we're going to do this, we need some kind of understanding, right? He hesitated for a moment. The alien woman made no move, no sound. She was as still as a statue, her red eyes locked on him. Was it possible she could understand him, even without speaking? Or was she just another alien being trapped in a cold, unfeeling shell? John stood up, his heart racing as he walked over to the small window. The view outside was obscured by fog, and the city lights twinkled dimly in the distance. He stared at the view for a few seconds, lost in thought. Could he really do this? Could he keep her here, keep her contained, without knowing anything about her? He turned back toward the alien woman. She hadn't moved. In fact, she seemed almost ... peaceful. He wasn't sure what to make of it, but something told him she wasn't as dangerous as he had first thought. I'll try, he said quietly, more to himself than to her. I don't know what you want, but I'll try to understand. The alien woman's red eyes softened for a split second, and John thought just for a moment that he saw a flicker of something. Perhaps it was a hint of relief, or maybe it was just his imagination playing tricks on him. But whatever it was, he felt a strange connection in that moment. Maybe, just maybe, they would be able to understand each other. As John sat back down, the room fell into an uneasy silence once again. But this time, it wasn't as oppressive as before. There was still much to figure out, but the first steps had been taken. The alien woman hadn't spoken, but her silent presence had already begun to stir something in him, something he hadn't felt in years. The assignment had only just begun, but John knew one thing for sure: nothing about this would be simple. The alien's transformation. The days passed slowly in the sterile room where John was assigned to watch over the alien woman. She never spoke, and for the most part neither did he. The silence between them stretched on, but something in the air had shifted. It wasn't just the eerie atmosphere of the room, or the weight of the responsibility resting on his shoulders. There was something deeper at play. John had been cautiously observing her for the past few days, trying to understand her behavior. At first, it seemed like she was nothing more than a prisoner, locked away in her own world. She didn't respond to his words, didn't flinch when he moved around her, and didn't seem to care about anything beyond her own stillness. But then, something unexpected happened. One evening, as John was sitting at the desk, flipping through some paperwork, he felt a strange chill in the air. It wasn't the usual coolness of the room. It felt ... different. He looked up from the papers to see the alien woman standing, her body slightly arched, as though she were in pain. Her hands clenched into fists, her posture rigid. Her glowing red eyes were wide open, but they weren't focused on him. Instead, she seemed to be staring at something only she could see. John's heart raced. "What's happening to you?" he muttered, standing up and moving closer to her. For a moment, he thought she might collapse, but then she straightened up and took a deep, trembling breath. The glow in her eyes flickered for a second, dimming to a faint amber. It was subtle, but it was the first sign of change he had seen. Her eyes softened, and she looked at him for the first time with a sense of recognition, as though she understood him in that fleeting moment. John hesitated, unsure whether to speak or not. He had been expecting this alien to remain a mystery, a cold being beyond his comprehension. But here she was, showing signs of something more, something human. Her posture relaxed slightly, and for the first time, she looked vulnerable. "Are you ... okay?" he asked quietly, almost afraid of the answer. The alien woman blinked slowly, her gaze not as cold as before. She didn't respond with words, but her eyes seemed to convey something, a silent message. Her body trembled again, and she stumbled slightly, her knees buckling. John rushed forward instinctively, catching her before she fell to the floor. "Hey, easy." "I got you," John said, trying to support her weight as best as he could. His hands were shaking as he held her steady. She didn't push him away, but neither did she seem to express gratitude. Her eyes were half-lidded, and there was a slight whimper in her throat, a sound that sent a chill down John's spine. It was almost ... human. John carefully guided her back to the bed, his mind racing. What was happening? This alien woman, who had been nothing more than a cold figure in the room, was showing signs of weakness. Could it be possible that she was more than just a prisoner? Was she ... feeling something? As he helped her lie down, John noticed something even more shocking. Her body seemed to be changing. Slowly, he could see subtle shifts in her form. Her skin was glowing with an otherworldly radiance, and her features were softening. It was as if something inside her was awakening. He sat down beside her, unsure of what to do. This wasn't part of the assignment. The alien woman wasn't supposed to change like this. She wasn't supposed to show emotions. She wasn't supposed to make sounds, let alone seem vulnerable. What's happening to you? John whispered again, his voice trembling with confusion. For a moment, there was no response. The alien woman's chest rose and fell with shallow breaths. Her eyes closed, and for the first time since John had met her, she seemed at peace. But just as he thought the situation might calm down, a low, unnatural hum filled the room. It came from within her, a deep, resonating sound that made John's skin crawl. He looked down at her, startled. Her body tensed again, and her eyes shot open, now glowing brightly. But there was something else in her expression. It wasn't pain anymore. It was ... determination. The hum grew louder, vibrating through the air like the sound of something ancient stirring within her. Her breathing quickened, and John felt a wave of unease wash over him. He stepped back, feeling helpless, not knowing what to do. Then, without warning, the alien woman lifted her head slightly, her red eyes locking onto his with an intensity he hadn't seen before. She didn't speak, but it was as if she were pleading with him. Her lips trembled, and for a brief moment, John thought he saw a tear form in her eye, an alien tear, something that shouldn't exist. The hum finally stopped, and the room fell silent again. John stood there, frozen, as the alien woman's gaze softened. The air felt thick, as though the very atmosphere had shifted around them. "What are you?" John whispered, his voice barely audible. Her expression remained unreadable, but her eyes seemed to say something he couldn't quite understand. For a brief, fleeting moment, it felt like she was trying to tell him her story, and for the first time, John realized that she wasn't just a prisoner. She wasn't just an alien. She was something more. The silence stretched on, but now it felt different. There was an unspoken bond between them, something that neither of them fully understood. It was as if they had both crossed a line, and now they were standing on the edge of something neither of them could escape from. John stepped back, his mind reeling with questions. What was happening to this alien woman, and what did it mean? For him, he had been assigned to keep her locked away, to treat her as a mere prisoner. But the more he observed her, the more he began to realize that this wasn't just some assignment. This was something that would change everything. As the alien woman closed her eyes again, resting peacefully, John sat back in his chair, his thoughts swirling. The transformation was only just beginning, and John couldn't shake the feeling that he was part of something far larger than he could have ever imagined. The hidden motherhood the following days were a blur for John. What had started as a simple assignment to watch over an alien prisoner had slowly become something far more complicated. The alien woman, once silent and unfeeling, now seemed to change with every passing hour. There was a softness to her eyes, a vulnerability that had never been there before. John found himself returning to her room more and more, not out of duty, but because he felt a strange pull. It was as if the connection between them, no matter how unlikely, was growing stronger with each day. But there was something else, something deeper that began to concern him. One evening, after a long day of work, John returned to the room to find the alien woman lying still on the bed, her eyes closed. She looked peaceful, but her breathing was shallow, labored, as though she were in pain. The strange humming sound that had once filled the room was absent now, replaced by an unsettling silence. John walked over to her, his heart pounding. "Hey," he said softly, his voice trembling. "You okay?" She didn't respond, but John noticed that her skin seemed to be glowing with an unnatural light again, much brighter than before. His hands hesitated over her, unsure whether to touch her or not. There was something strange happening, something that he didn't understand. He reached out and gently touched her arm, his fingers brushing against the cool, smooth surface of her skin. It was then that he felt a faint pulse, almost like a heartbeat. His heart skipped a beat as he realized something was stirring inside her, something he hadn't expected. The alien woman's red eyes fluttered open, locking onto his. She didn't speak, but there was a new intensity in her gaze. It was no longer the cold, unreadable stare of the past. There was something in her eyes now, something that looked almost like longing, like she was reaching out for something she couldn't explain. John stepped back, confusion swirling in his chest. "What's happening to you?" he whispered, almost afraid of the answer. But before she could react, the sound of a low growl filled the room. Not from the woman, but from somewhere deep within her. John froze, his eyes wide. The sound was guttural, primal, and it sent a shiver down his spine. He had never heard anything like it before. It was as if something was awakening inside her, something powerful and ancient. Her chest rose and fell rapidly, as if struggling to catch her breath. John's heart raced. He didn't know what to do. Should he call for help? Should he report this? He had no idea what kind of creature he was dealing with, but he knew that things were quickly getting out of hand. The alien woman's lips parted, and for the first time in days, she spoke. But her voice was weak, barely a whisper. "It's coming," she murmured. John's breath hitched. "What's coming? What are you talking about?" The alien woman's eyes darkened, the glowing red fading as she looked down at her abdomen. For the first time, John noticed the slight bulge in her stomach. His heart skipped a beat as he realized what it meant. "You single quote, pregnant?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Her gaze met his, and though she didn't speak, there was a silent acknowledgement in her eyes. Yes, she was pregnant, but how? John stepped back, feeling his stomach twist in disbelief. She had been declared sterile. There was no way she could have been pregnant. But there it was, clear as day. The woman in front of him, this alien, was carrying something inside her. He had heard rumors about alien species and their strange biology, but nothing had prepared him for this. Was it possible that the pregnancy was a result of some experiment? Was this part of the reason she had been imprisoned? John had so many questions, but for now, there was no answer. Before he could say anything else, the alien woman's body began to tremble once more. She winced, clutching her stomach as though the pain was too much to bear. John's instinct kicked in. He rushed to her side, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. Hey, it's okay," he said softly, though he wasn't sure if it would. "Help. You're not alone. I'm here." She looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and something else, something he hadn't seen before. It was the vulnerability of a mother, not the cold, calculating alien he had first met. The woman's breath was ragged, but she didn't pull away from his touch. Slowly, she reached out with one trembling hand, placing it over his. It was a small gesture, but it meant more than words ever could. In that moment, John realized that she wasn't just an alien prisoner. She wasn't just a cold, emotionless being. She was something moresome who had been trapped, hurt, and now, perhaps, was finding herself. "Don't be afraid," John whispered. "We'll figure this out." The alien woman gave him a faint, almost imperceptible nod. Her eyes closed, and for a moment, it seemed like she was trying to calm herself, trying to push through the pain. The transformation within her, whatever it was was only just beginning. And John, in that moment, realized that he wasn't just a mechanic anymore. He was part of something far larger than he could have ever imagined. As the alien woman's breath slowly steadied, John stood up, feeling the weight of the responsibility settling on his shoulders. Whatever was happening to her, he couldn't turn away. He had been assigned to this task, but now it was personal. There was more to her story, more to her than anyone had ever known. And John was going to find out what it was. Outside the room, the silence pressed in, but John didn't notice. He was lost in the moment, lost in the realization that the alien woman was changing. She wasn't just a prisoner anymore. She was becoming a mother. And for the first time, John understood that the journey ahead would be anything but ordinary. Unforeseen bonds. The days after the alien woman's unexpected transformation were unlike any John had ever experienced. The more he interacted with her, the more he realized that what he had thought to be a simple assignment had become something far deeper and far more complicated. The alien woman, once cold and unresponsive, had become something entirely different. She was no longer just a prisoner, locked away in a sterile room. She was now a mother, and John had no idea what that meant for either of them. Each day he watched over her, helping her through the strange changes that were happening within her. It was clear that she was in pain, though she rarely showed it. She would sometimes wince, clutching her stomach, but she never cried out. She never asked for help. John had never thought much about motherhood before. It had always been a distant concept, something he had seen in movies or heard about from friends. But seeing the alien woman go through this, watching her body change, watching her protect something that hadn't even been born, yet changed something in him. One evening, after a long day of work, John returned to her room, his mind heavy with questions. He had been noticing the way the alien woman seemed to calm when he was near her, how she would relax just a little when he sat by her side. But it wasn't just that. It was the way her eyes would soften, the way she looked at him with an understanding that seemed far beyond what either of them could put into words. Tonight, she was sitting on the bed, her hands resting gently on her growing belly. The glow in her eyes had dimmed slightly, but it was still there, faint, but undeniable. She looked peaceful, as though the pain had subsided for the moment. John hesitated before stepping into the room. "How are you feeling today?" he asked. Softly, she looked up at him, her gaze steady. There was a quiet acknowledgement in her eyes, but no words. The silence between them was comfortable, almost soothing. John sat down on the edge of the bed, his gaze focused on her. "You don't have to speak. I don't expect you to, but I can see that you're different, and I'm starting to understand." "Well, I don't know what I'm starting to understand, but I'm trying." The alien woman didn't move, but her eyes seemed to grow softer, almost tender. John felt a warmth in his chest, a feeling that was strange yet comforting. There was a connection between them now, something unspoken, yet so present that he couldn't ignore it. He wasn't just taking care of her anymore. He was becoming part of her journey. "Is it getting harder?" John asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The alien woman slowly nodded. She didn't speak, but her expression said everything. She was struggling, trying to protect whatever was growing inside her. The weight of it, all her transformation, her pregnancy, the pain she was enduring was starting to take its toll. John's heart went out to her. He had never imagined that this assignment would turn into something like this. The woman who had once been a prisoner, a cold and distant alien, was now a mother, and he was part of her journey. Whether he wanted to be or not, he had become involved in her life, He reached out, placing his hand gently on hers. It was a simple gesture, but it felt right. She didn't pull away, didn't flinch. Her hand, cool to the touch, rested against his. For a long time, they sat in silence, both of them lost in their own thoughts. The room was quiet, except for the faint hum of the ventilation system. It was as though the world outside had stopped. For a moment, allowing them to exist in this small bubble of shared understanding. "You're not alone," John said softly, breaking the silence. "I don't know what this means, but I'm here. Whatever happens next, we'll figure it out together." The alien woman's eyes fluttered slightly, a flicker of something passing through them. She didn't speak, but her gaze softened, and John felt a sense of calm settle over him. It was as though, in that moment, she understood him in a way that words couldn't convey. For the first time since he had met her, John felt that maybe he wasn't just watching over her. Maybe, in some strange way, they were both looking out for each other. He didn't know what the future held or how things would turn out. But he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going to abandon her. The bond between them was growing stronger. Each day, it wasn't just about taking care of her anymore. It was about something deeper. It was about trust. It was about compassion. It was about the unexpected connection that had formed between two beings who were, in many ways, as different as could be. As John sat there, with the alien woman's hand resting in his, he realized that he was no longer just a mechanic in a strange assignment. He was part of a story far larger than he could have imagined, a story that would change everything. He didn't know what the future would bring, but for the first time, he wasn't afraid. He would face it with her, together. The unexpected mother, the days that followed, felt like they were slipping away in a blur. Time had become an unnoticeable thing, fading in the background of the strange reality John found himself living in. The alien woman who was now something more than just a prisoner was evolving, and so was his understanding of what it meant to care for her. Her pregnancy progressed, and the changes were impossible to ignore. Her once cold demeanor had given way to something warmer, more fragile. The glow in her eyes had dimmed, but her presence had become stronger, almost magnetic. She no longer kept herself hidden from John, nor did she recoil at his presence. If anything, she seemed to seek comfort in his company, and John found himself growing more protective of her with each passing day. One evening, as John was walking toward her room, he could feel the tension in the air, like something important was about to happen. He wasn't sure what it was, he couldn't put his finger on it, but there was a strange stillness that filled the building, a feeling that the world outside had been suspended. When he opened the door, he found her sitting on the bed, her hands resting on her stomach. She looked up at him with her glowing red eyes, but this time there was something different in her gaze, something urgent. "Are you okay?" John asked, his voice low with concern. She didn't answer at first. Instead, her body tensed, her hands clutching the bedspread tightly as her breath became shallow. John's heart skipped a beat. He rushed to her side, instinctively placing a hand on her shoulder. Her eyes flickered with a mixture of pain and something else, something far more intense. It was as if she was battling something deep inside her, something that neither of them could control, I think. "It's time," she whispered, her voice faint and strained. John froze. Time for what? The pregnancy, the baby. He hadn't known what to expect from this. No one had told him what would happen when she reached this point, and he had no way of knowing how to help her. But the look in her eyes told him that he couldn't back away now. Whatever was happening, they had to face it together. "Just breathe," John said. trying to steady his own racing heart. "I'm here. Whatever it is, I won't leave." The alien woman nodded, her eyes locking with his. Her breathing became more erratic, but she seemed to calm under his touch, as though his presence alone was enough to steady her. John watched in awe as her body seemed to ripple with energy. The glow in her skin returned, brighter than ever before, and her breathing deepened. The air in the room felt thick, as though something was stirring, something powerful, something primal. Then, without warning, she gasped, and John could feel the tension in the room explode. She cried out, a strange alien sound that shook him to his core. Her body arched forward, and John quickly stepped back, unsure of what to do. He knew nothing about giving birth, let alone delivering an alien child. But then, as if sensing his panic, the alien woman reached out with one hand, gripping his wrist with surprising strength. She looked up at him, her face contorted in pain, but also in determination. "Stay with me," she whispered. "Help me." John's chest tightened. He wasn't sure how he could help, but in that moment, he realized that he didn't need to have all the answers. All he had to do was be there for her, and so he gently took her hand and squeezed it, offering her the only thing he could dash comfort. Minutes passed, though they felt like hours. The room was filled with her cries, her body trembling with each wave of pain, and yet John never left her side. He held her hand, talked to her, told her she wasn't alone. Then, just as suddenly as the pain had started, it stopped. The alien woman collapsed back against the bed, her breathing labored but calmer now. John felt a sense of relief wash over him, but it was quickly replaced by fear as he saw something strange, something he never could have imagined. In the alien woman's arms, a small, glowing creature lay curled against her chest. It wasn't quite human, but it wasn't entirely alien either. It was a strange combination of the two, human in form, but with the same eerie glow in its skin. It was delicate, fragile, but alive. John stood frozen for a moment, unable to process what he was seeing. This was what she had been carrying. The baby, the child she had nurtured inside her. The alien woman gently cradled the infant, her hands trembling as she stared down at it. There was a softness in her expression now, a quiet tenderness that John had never seen before. She wasn't the cold, emotionless alien that had been assigned to him. She was a mother, and her entire world had just shifted. John slowly approached, not wanting to intrude but unable to look away from the tiny being in her arms. The alien woman looked up at him, her red eyes filled with an unspoken plea. There was no fear in her gaze now, only a quiet gratitude. Is it yours?" John asked, his voice shaking. He couldn't quite comprehend what was happening, but he had to ask. The alien woman nodded, a small, soft smile crossing her lips. "It is. She is mine." John's heart swelled with emotion. He had never imagined that this would happen, that the cold alien woman he had been assigned to guard would become a mother. He had never thought that this strange bond between them would evolve into something so ... human ... and yet, there she was, holding her child, her eyes filled with love. "Congratulations," John whispered, his voice barely a whisper. "She's beautiful." The alien woman nodded again, her gaze never leaving her child. The room had fallen silent, save for the soft, rhythmic sound of the baby's breathing. John stepped back, giving her space. This moment was hers. She had brought a life into the world, and for the first time, John realized that he was witnessing something extraordinary. This was no longer just an assignment. It was something far more profound than he could have ever imagined. In the quiet of that moment, John understood that he was no longer just a mechanic in the wrong place at the wrong time. He was part of something much bigger. He was part of the beginning of a new life, a new bond, and a future that none of them could have predicted. And he knew with certainty that this would change everything. As John watched the alien woman cradle her newborn child, he realized that the journey ahead was far from over. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, no longer as strangers, but as family.